Lagos Talks
91.3.
News.
President Muhammadu Buhari has sworn in Justice Ariwoola Olukayode as the substantive Chief Justice of Nigeria. Justice Ariwoola took the judicial oath of office in a brief ceremony at the Council Chambers in Abuja before the commencement of the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting presided over by the President on Wednesday. Justice Ariwoola was appointed a Justice of the Supreme Court on November 22, 2011 by President Goodluck Jonathan and assumed the position of CJN in acting capacity following the resignation of the outgone CJN Justice Tanko Mohammed on health grounds. The 2023 appropriation bill of 20.5 trillion naira has passed through the second reading in the Senate and the House of Representatives. The upper chamber referred the bill to its Committee on Appropriation for further legislative action and expressed the satisfaction over the rise in recurrent expenditure, which is up from over 6 trillion naira this year to over 8 trillion naira budgeted for next year. According to the lawmakers, Nigeria cannot continue to borrow to fund 1% of its population. Subsequently, the Senate asked its committee to report back in 4 weeks. The federal government has begun a process to review the Land Use Act. The Director of Lands and Housing of the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, Godwin Ichoyachinim, disclosed this at the 27th Conference of Directors of Lands in the Federal and State Ministries that it had become necessary to commence the process due to numerous friction between state and federal governments on land administration. According to him, the friction has impeded promises made to Nigerians in terms of infrastructure and housing provision. The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Abubakar Malami has issued a directive in a letter to the Federal High Court for the arraignment of a former aviation minister, Senator Stella Odua. Odua and other defendants in the alleged fraud trial were to have been docked since last year, but was for 6 times adjourned following the request of the Minister Malami to allow him study the case file and give legal opinion. The EFCC in the charges alleged that Odua misappropriated 7.9 billion naira in public funds while serving as Minister of Aviation in former President Goodluck Jonathan's administration. The Minister of Power, Mr. Abubakar Aliyu, says there is no plan to privatize the transmission company of Nigeria, TCN. In a statement issued by Malam Issa Sanusi, the Special Assistant on Media to the Minister in Abuja on Wednesday, Aliyu urged members of the public to disregard statement on the issue. According to the Minister, the federal government has no plan to sell or privatize the TCN, and no one in the government has made a statement of intent to sell the company. He said that the TCN was a centerpiece in the federal government's efforts to rejuvenate the power sector. The Obidati Presidential Campaign Organization has unveiled a 1,234 member-strong Labour Party Presidential Campaign Council headed by Mohammed Zarewa as chairman. Director General of the Peter Obi Campaign Organization, Dr. Doyin Okukwe, retained his position as DG of the Campaign Council, while National Chairman of the Labour Party, Julius Abure, was named Chairman of the Advisory Council, and Osaleka Obaze was named General Manager of the campaign. The All Progressives Congress, the APC, has disowned the immediate past Minister of State for Mines and Steel Development, Dr. Uche Oga, as its governorship candidate in Abia State. The ruling party told the Federal High Court in Abuja on Wednesday that it did not conduct a primary election that purportedly produced Oga as its governorship candidate in Abia for the 2023 general elections. On the contrary, APC claimed that its National Working Committee conducted a primary election monitored by officials of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, which produced Ikechi Emenike as its official governorship flag bearer. Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State has approved 1 billion naira for emergency relief measures to support flood victims in Ahuada West and Ogba Ekbema and Doni local government areas of the state. Governor Wike explained that the fund was to enable vulnerable families, particularly in Ahuada and the 2 local government areas, the most impacted areas in the state, to cope with the devastating flood water. The Lagos State Traffic Management Authority, LASMA, says it will no longer be business as usual for bus rapid transit BRT drivers who violate traffic rules and regulations without regard in the state. The general manager, LASMA, Mr. Bolaji Oriagba, is quoted in a statement as giving the warning when a delegation from Lamata paid a courtesy visit to the agency's headquarters in Oshodi, Lagos. Oriagba said the new enforcement followed series of complaints from members of the public on the attitude of some of the drivers, particularly at major intersections across the metropolis, as they cause avoidable traffic obstructions. The Lagos Economic Summit, otherwise known as Hengbeti 2022, has formally launched a new economic development plan for a timeline of 30 years, with more than 50% project funding expected to come from internally generated revenue. At closing ceremony of the two-day summit, the Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu said the document, which is built on 4 pillars and 20 different strategies, is about the people and the future of Lagos, adding that the plan will enable fast implementation of infrastructural projects.
So Lagos could be, the human-centric capital where we continue to develop hyperscale skills, future of work. You can see with people we're training in entertainment industry and all of that's what it's about. But create a space for us, create that engagement for us where we can continue to do what it is that we want to do for ourselves. So that's really what this has been. It's been an inclusive engagement, and it's been very participatory, and it is an engagement that we'll continue to have even outside of this summit.
While reading out the summit resolutions of the state's long-term economic framework, Chairperson of Hengbeti Summit 2022, Mary Iwelumo, said the summit has developed a dedicated website for the resolutions on www.lsdp2052.com, which include waste to wealth and diaspora involvement with state affairs.
Evaluate the possibility to develop Badagry as a diaspora destination. Encourage partnerships between industry players and Lagos State to promote growth within the sector. Safety and security. Encourage cooperation between private sector, public sector, and civil society to strengthen the security forces of the state and enable them to operate effectively.
You're still listening to the World News. Moving on to the foreign scene, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, has further discussed Ukraine's financing needs following Russia's invasion, which has left devastating and far-reaching human and economic impacts in its wake. At an IMF World Bank Ministerial Roundtable held in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who spoke via video, acknowledged that economic support from the international community has been instrumental to ensuring continuity of essential services such as health, education, pensions, and social protection for the people of Ukraine. President Zelensky, however, asked the IMF to create a forum to be known as the Ukraine Economic Forum for sharing information and clarifying financing needs. He proposed the idea in 3 steps.
All those present here, we are thankful for your attention to Ukraine. I'm thankful to World Bank and IMF for their institutional leadership in implementing Ukraine support programs. You all can see that Ukraine is strong enough to stand through in this war. Every specific step in helping Ukraine is a real reduction of Russian aggression, and I would like to propose to you 3 such steps. First, I believe it would be useful if we created a coordination format for financial support of Ukraine. It would be good to create a permanent working group that would provide financial support for Ukraine.
He also spoke about needed funds for Ukraine in order to provide basic needs to make up for the deficit of the country's budget and also to help in rebuilding critical infrastructure.
Number 2, reliable making up for the deficit of people and providing for the basic needs of people. At this time, we have 2 key financial needs of the country. That's $38 billion to make up for the deficit of our budget for next year. That includes salaries of doctors and teachers, social payments and pensions, and other $17 billion that were verified by the World Bank and needed to rebuild the critical infrastructure. The third step I would like to support is specific instruments to support investment for Ukraine.
In her remarks, IMF's Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva, who expressed her deepest sympathy for the continued loss of lives in Ukraine, had assured that Ukraine's financing needs remain very large for 2023, with an estimate of between $3 to $4 billion monthly.
Hopefully the war would end sooner rather than later. But from what we are seeing, we have to be there for the Ukrainian people. This group has mobilized $35 billion, most already delivered. Our team is going to be with the Ukrainian team immediately after the annual meetings to determine the macroeconomic framework and also what that would mean in terms of budgetary implications. Our preliminary estimate is that somewhere between $3 and $4 billion are necessary on a monthly basis.
And now to business news. The Nigerian Exchange Limited declined further on Tuesday as market capitalization depreciated by 18 billion naira or 0.07% to close at 25.889 trillion naira. Also, the all-share index fell by 34.08 points to 47,531.84 from 47.565.92 recorded at the previous trading. And finally, in sport news, the World 100 meters hurdles champion and world record holder Tobi Amusan has been listed among the 10 nominees for the Women's World Athlete of the Year organized by World Athletics. The athletics body made this known in a press release published on their website on Wednesday, October 12. Amusan, alongside Kenyan's Faith Kipyegon, who is the current World 1,500 meters champion and Diamond League 1,500 meters champion, were the only Africans to be nominated.
Lagos Talks
91.3.
News.